This documentary will focus on the function of community centres in contemporary society, exploring what role they play in people's lives. It will revolve around St Paul's Learning Centre, as the sociological implications of its physical location and inhabitants alike make it an apt case study. I plan to investigate if community centres are more integral to society now more than ever, and if a combination of austerity, migration and urbanisation has resulted in more kinds of marginalised people and less places of support integrated in communities to relieve the deficit of care required, leaving some to slip through the cracks and community centres needed. Or, alternatively, does a lack of community and shared community practice mean that urban cityscapes don't have a place for community centres? Could the money injected into them through various revenue streams be better invested in more dynamic and contemporary infrastructures? Furthermore, are there alternatives to community centres that we are discounting, such as online communities or more fluid groups whose bonds are rooted in consumerism? Research from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that public spaces play a vital role in community cohesion, and their emergence in towns and cities can potentially be beneficial to the social and economic lives of their inhabitants. Conradson found that community centres can be complex spaces, though, and whilst for some they are a space of care in cities, which are often defined by ambivalence and instrumentalism, others found further contention and exclusion from microcosmic in-groups there. In summary, with my documentary I wish to explore whether a society increasingly defined by individual needs still requires literal community hubs, and indeed if they're even compatible with contemporary forms of identity. Or perhaps have they altered with society and become a response to a lack of guidance and stability for meaning-seeking people? St Paul's Learning Centre, situated on Grosvenor Road, is in an area that was rated in the top 3% for multiple deprivation in England. It is also situated in a ward with a relatively significant black minority ethnic population, exceeding 20%, and is known for having a large African Caribbean population. St Paul's leads on to Stokes Croft, an area of great art and community, but also gentrification and ever-increasing commercialisation, with rising house prices and a growing student population. Just beyond this is Cabot Circus, a place of extreme consumption, where streams of people exist in mutual support. St Paul's Learning Centre is host to a variety of clubs and schemes. These include creative outlets like photography, or development of English language skills and other qualifications, and even childcare too. Legal and practical advice can be found here, and there is also a community-run cafe. Generally, skills and support are to be found. The sociological relevance of this concerns whether community centres are a tool of social support and outreach for people whose experience barriers relating to education, work and social relations in St Paul's. Furthermore, its geographical positioning around an area which demonstrates the increasingly fractured facets of contemporary society allows me to explore the current role of the community centre. Out of Nichols' 6 documentary modes, mine will most closely mirror expository, as I will lead with facts, statistics and interviews. However, Nichols himself acknowledged that the modes are not exclusive, and although I intend to present my documentary in a style similar to how an expository documentary is collated, I intend for my narrative to be less aggressively persuasive, allowing viewers to come to their own conclusions in a style more closely resembling the observational mode. The composition of a shot describes how various elements come together to inform and construct the narrative of a story. A few compositional influences are the lighting, the focus, the line of sight, and the scale of objects in the frame. Composition can serve to focus the viewer on the right subject and display power dynamics within the image. It can distinguish the subject from objects around it and outline how they relate to one another. I intend to shoot in colour using high levels of contrast. The purpose of this is to illustrate the vibrant culture that surrounds a place like St Paul's Learning Centre. Upon visiting here, I was met with colourful artwork, signage and displays, penetrating through the dreary colour of the building itself. The high energy and creativity of this learning centre is something I want my viewers to understand, so I'll be emphasising this. One place that I take inspiration from is the Living Differently series, which is a series of short films each centred around different people who have overcome adversity and documents how they occupy space in contemporary society. Similar to this series, I will alternate between single shots and B-roll to make visually compelling and to cultivate a sustained narrative throughout. This gives me the ability to reinforce certain points made using related action shots and panoramic shots. I will be conducting interviews with people involved in the centre to inform my documentary and root it in lived experiences. There are a few things that need to be considered here. Firstly, the location. I will hold them at the centre, as this is a place my interviewee should feel comfortable and provides a context for the viewer. The interviews will be recorded using single shots, and I intend to place the interviewee in the foreground, focused, and have a stationary interior shot of the centre in the background. This will keep the focus on what the person has to say while still keeping the shot interesting and relative to the narrative. I intend to ask semi-structured and open-ended questions during my interviews. This is for a number of reasons. Firstly, I want to receive answers that fully inform the viewer and need little to no off-screen narration. I feel it would be easier to immerse oneself in without interjections from an off-screen character. Secondly, a key tool for a documentary filmmaker to possess is flexibility. Although I have aims, I need to be able to follow interesting leads provided to me along the journey of production. Therefore, my questions cannot be too rigid. Thirdly, I want to allow the people I'm interviewing to fully inform me of their experiences and opinions, so I must be willing and able to go in whatever direction they feel relevant. However, there needs to be some form of structure both so I'm able to prompt them as there are specific themes I wish to investigate, and in case they are not sure of where to start. My narration will be off-screen, primarily to provide sociological background. I would not want my physical presence within a frame to disturb the intended tone, and I feel the interviews will be easy to follow and less jarring if they are anecdotal rather than conversational. Ultimately, I want to engage with you in discourse surrounding the function and the value of community centres, while also encouraging them to question why people may need to use them at all.